Good afternoon. A bit of technical hitch there, which has put everything in a little bit of disarray. My name's Mark Woods. Welcome to Avoiding the Mistakes and Pains of ISO Management Systems. So a couple of things to start with. This is our very first LinkedIn Live, hence the technical mistakes. We have about 120 odd registrations. So as a result of that, there might be a few people that might be a little bit even later than us. Whilst we wait for people to log on and hopefully kind of catch up, maybe put your name in the chat, put kind of where you are, what you're doing, how far you are along your ISO journey. Who knows, there might be other people on the call that may indeed need your services. So whilst we're here and just at the start of things, I thought I'd make a couple of introductions. We have our princess of presentations, our goddess of graphics, that's Katie, awaiting in the wings, running something called Riverside. So that's a studio that sits separate to LinkedIn, and then we are streaming to LinkedIn. So that creates another little bit of a techie problem, in so much as there is a little bit of a delay. We also have lurking in the background, Jo Herbert, one of our people. She is our what did I call her the other day? She is 50% of our mob with the gob. I am the inferior 50% of that kind of partnership, if you like. So she is the champion of chatter for us. So hopefully, if things have been put in the chat, then let us proceed. So, avoiding the mistakes and pains of ISO management systems. One slide on us to start with. Our mission really is to help ambitious owners and managers become great leaders by helping them deliver better strategies, better systems, which is the ISO bit, better measurement, which is my favourite bit, and engaged people delivering better results, which is the interesting bit. So these are my contact details. If you've got any problems, then give us a call, or got any issues that you want to discuss, by all means give us a call. I don't bite, unless you ask me. So agenda for today is going to be, it's not all of these 15 mistakes. We haven't got time for all of these. All of these 15 mistakes are outlined on our ISO Consultants UK.co.uk website. So we're going to be looking at the top 3-4 mistakes. Because we are talking mistakes, and this is a dry old subject, I thought we'd start with some of the mistakes that maybe we've made along the way. So this was a mistake of mine, maybe 40 years ago when I was about 20. Big Robbie was a mate of mine, and when we were apprentices in Liverpool, I made the mistake of going back out into a snowball fight. Big Robbie, fantastic rugby fan, rugby tackled me, and my face found the only piece of pavement not covered in snow, and south went my tooth. And this is me a few years ago when it fell out again. It is now back in, as you may see. We're going to look at implementation pains. These are ISO implementation pains. We're going to look at 3 or 4 of those, and we're also going to look at support and evolution pains that you might experience once you've implemented these systems. And hopefully, I think the thing to think about it with the presentation is this is a pointer. And we will be pointing you to various resources that you can use and abuse at any time you so choose. And these are typical of the resources that we have. We're going to go into a lot more detail about these in the end. And these are the links to those resources, or to some of those resources, to be fair. But we will come back to these resources later. The good news is it's all free. We absolutely take the view that the trick, if you like, is not in the knowledge. Anybody can acquire the knowledge. The trick is in actually the execution, and with kind of busy, stressed out, time constrained managers and their people, they often don't have the time to do this stuff. So we're entirely transparent with regard to our own IP, if you like, and we're going to stick all of it on the web. So pain number one. We need ISO to win more work. Many of you will have been in this situation, and if that is you, then put your name in the chat and say, yeah, hey, this was my pain number one, or indeed is my pain number one. How do you resolve that pain number one? Well, the obvious answer is kind of go get ISO, but there might be some steps that you might want to undertake before that, and one of those would be to download and look at our book, which we've titled Using Management Systems to Unleash Creative Destruction. There are 3 or 4 components of ISO, which are normally the kind of the dull and the boring bits, which are absolutely ripe for using properly and helping you unleash a process of creative destruction. And as it says on the cover and it says down here, it's your damn business, it's your damn rules. So the whole of this thing, the whole of this ISO thing should be geared around how you want it to be managed. It's essentially your book of best practice. So, pain number 2 is the flip side, really, of pain number 1, but it's kind of real. I was talking to a company 2-3 months ago, quite a big company, maybe £40 million turnover. They focus on creating construction spaces for the events sector, so big theatres and things like that. And they had lost a £300,000 piece of work, and they were on the cusp of losing a £1 million piece of work because they didn't have ISO. So not having ISO can actually hurt quite a bit. The answer to that is go get ISO, and some of this collateral hopefully will help you do that. Pain number 3. My processes could be better, slicker and quicker. So this is where another similar sort of size company actually, but completely different field, they were running projects where they were designing big fridge work, and on each order they reckoned they lost anywhere between 150 and 250,000 pounds. So they knew their processes could be better, slicker and quicker. They had ISO, but it wasn't being implemented properly, and they needed to kind of codify their best practice and make ISO work for them. And it should absolutely be that way round. It's about ISO working for the business rather than you working for ISO. And we're going to talk more about that later. So really that's beginning to think maybe a little bit beyond ISO, and kind of questions you might ask as kind of where do you innovate, where do you improve, how do you prioritise? They're those types of questions, and we've got a whole load of stuff that will kind of help you do that if that is the position that you're in. So if that is the position that you're in, drop that into the chat. Let us get that feedback and maybe start some discussion post the event. And there was a company that worked in the lift sector, and I can remember at the assessment, the assessor turned round to the lady who was one of the 2 directors, little family firm, about £1 million turnover, and he said, the 100-yard dash is over, let the marathon begin. I think it's a lovely way of encapsulating what ISO should really help you do. It is there to help you drive improvement and change, given that it's used properly. So, mistake number 1. We're talking about mistakes now, not pains. Mistake number 1. This could be my mistake on the right-hand side. This is my number 1 son, and that mistake was made not this Monday, but the Monday before last. And I'm not quite sure what the mistake was, leaving his car in a ditch or having the kid 21 years ago. And I'm sure some of you can resonate with that. Fortunately, he was perfectly fine, as indeed was the car. Yes, we got it out. A little bit of a fraught day, that. But ISO mistake is attempting to squeeze your business into the clauses of the standard. And there's somebody else that is due to be on the call that might recognise me from this picture here, taken 30 odd years ago, because we both used to work for a company called Van Moppy's IDP, Industrial Diamond Products. I ran something called the Vitrified Cell, and Triss Southgate, who's on the call, hello Triss, next time you're down in Snodland, and yes, there is a place called Snodland, give us a call, love to see you again. We were working in Van Moppy's IDP, and the Vitrified Cell that I was running at the time became the spearhead for putting in BS 5750. And if we go back to BS 5750, the clauses of the standard look like this. They don't look like that anymore. You've got the 10 clauses of the standard and Annex SL and all sorts of stuff like that. But the point is, some of this language is still pretty arcane. But we dutifully, and we still see this even today, we dutifully at the time wrote a procedure for each one of these clauses, 4.1 to 4.18. And they had terms like product identification and traceability and process control. Well, if you're a pure service company, as indeed we are as a consultancy company, what do those things mean to you? Well, product identification and traceability, not to a service company, but to a manufacturing or maybe a construction company, that's stock and stores. So why don't we call it stock and stores? And process control is about the process that you undertake. It's now called operations in all of the ISOs, the management system ISOs. So it's a bit more friendly, but it's still not brilliantly friendly. And that's what we mean by trying to squeeze the standard into your business. Absolutely do not do that. So the solution to that is you need to adopt the get job, do job, build job approach. We think most organisations have got 3 processes, and it is get job, sales and marketing, do job, operations, delivery, kind of call it what you want, fulfilment, don't care what you call it, and build job, kind of get paid, ISO's not really interested in, but actually I think that's a good thing to process, to codify. You decide, but it's not a requirement of ISO, but I think it's a good thing to do. So what does this get job, do job, build job, get work, do work, build work approach really look like for a real life client? Well, let's have a look at a couple of examples. So there's get job, do job, build job, and fundamentally what we want to do is improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of the activity. So that's back to one of the earlier panes. So this is what we would call a core activity map, and it's for an architectural practice. So architects worked something called the REBA code that some of you might know about. They had a sales activity, get work, and they do PQQs and tenders. That used to then fall into the actual delivery of the architectural services. Now the REBA code's got about 7-8 different kind of components to it, and they put all of that into one kind of codified procedure, if you like, with a design review and a gateway review as separate activities. It's not the only way of doing it. We worked with a number of architects and they've done it slightly different ways. They would then get feedback from the client, because the client's paid for the work, for the building to be built, but they would also get feedback from the end users. And that's quite important in some aspects. So if I'll give you an example, one of our long-standing clients, he's been a client, he's built 2 £10 million businesses, sold them both. He had the misfortune, because it was a lift company that he worked for, he had the misfortune to fall down a lift shaft, broke his back, and he was in a wheelchair, and built 2 £10 million businesses. Pretty cool geezer. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because he recuperated after breaking his back in a building that won all sorts of awards, because that was built by Norman Foster. The clients loved the building. The people in the building loathed it. Too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter. So it's sometimes useful to get feedback from both components. And there might be different components of people that you need feedback from, and there's a bit more of that later. So with that feedback, it's then a case of having got the feedback, what can we do to improve? Some of which might be big stuff, and that might fall into the business plan and resource planning and things like that. So this is another client. This is an electronics manufacturer, and whilst they did manufacture in the UK, or do manufacture in the UK, 80% of their work is manufactured elsewhere. So around the world, all sorts of different places. Very, very sales orientated. £10 million turnover company, maybe 50 people. So they'd generate awareness, they'd process the inquiry, they'd process the order, they'd fulfil and deliver the order, and then they'd get client feedback. And the processing inquiries and the orders had information kind of going backwards and forwards between purchasing and production and all the rest of it. Now they had 3 sets of clients, because this was for electronic devices for building services companies. They had the building end user, they had people like FM companies, they had contractors, and all of those people would buy their products. And in going through this process, one of the things we decided to do was to concentrate on the contractors, because they were better margin products, better margin customers rather. So they'd learn from that, and then they'd design and redevelop the products to allow the contractors to get in and out more quickly, because that became an order winner. So good process to go through, and it might focus some effort on the things that you do. This is for another company based down in Hastings. They make 2 types of products. One is a big sheet, a plyboard size sheet. It's a rain shield for buildings. Plyboard size, so 2 metres by a metre and a bit, and it's made of reconstituted stone. The other, completely different product, is the framework, an aluminium framework, to hang on their products, or indeed other people's products. Now the point here is, you may have 3, 4, 5 products, all of which are managed slightly differently, and all of which you need to connect the relevant clause of ISO to. So they had product development in the front. Sales, they had 2 different sales teams that work slightly differently. So that sales activity could have been, if you like, similar to the product development activity, and cut across all of the activities. They had the lab in the middle, and then they would get customer satisfaction and get feedback from the customers towards the end of the process. The point about this is we need to make this diagram look like your business. I think we've got one more. Yeah, this is for a company that does make bus shelters for different people, councils and the like. They would acquire customers, so there was a marketing process that would get some inquiries, and then let's say they only made red bus shelters, that would go into planning production. If somebody said, I want a blue bus shelter, that would go into processing design. Personally, that for me doesn't do what it says on the tin, but it's not for me, and it's not for an assessor. If you're only 10 people, you're there for 2,500 days a year or more, and the assessor might be there for a day. There's a point and then a lot of noughts before you get to a percentage of what that is. So you're there for a hell of a lot more time than they are. This ought to be for you, this system, not for them. Clearly we've got to tick all the right boxes, but there's more of you and you're there longer, so let's use your terminology and your language. However, if somebody had come along and said, I don't want a bus shelter, I want a cycle shelter, that went into new product development. And that does do what it says on the tin. And then it comes back and it goes through processing design, planning, production, purchasing, and then kind of managing. So we're trying to make all the time this look like your business. We've also gone, it kind of ISO hints at kind of numbers and measures and all the rest of it, but we deliberately, in this instance, and this is a pastiche of the KPIs that they use, we kind of aligned all of their key performance indicators with their various processes so we could better use them in order to judge success of each of those processes. So that would all then sit in something that we would call an overall systems diagram. It becomes a one-page window into the entire organisation. So, mistake number one, attempting to squeeze your business into the clauses of the standard. The solution to mistake number one is adopt this get job, do job, build job approach, because people ain't going to understand stuff if it's not written in your language and it doesn't reflect the way in which your work works. Mistake number two, and I've kind of hinted at this as part of mistake number one, but that would be adopting the language and terminology of the standard. And the solution there is to use your own language. You know, as it says on the front of, where are we? It says on the front of here, which is a little booklet I'm going to talk about later, it's your damn business, it's your damn rules. And I've written all over that one because we're in the throes of making version 2. So if this is a mistake, again, put a note in the chat. This is absolutely a mistake that you've made, or maybe you haven't made it. It would be interesting to know. So that's the solution. Use your terms and your terminology. And as an example of this, we've just finished, or gotten a company the other side of Christmas, pure service company. If you are an entrepreneur, you're an owner manager of a business and you're looking for a financial advisor that specialises in entrepreneurs, check out Smythe House. So this is an advert for one of our clients, smythehouse.co.uk. We help them get ISO 9000. And for a pure service organisation, they were never going to use words like approved suppliers list and non-conformance reports and audits. So we've used some of this before, but we went to town with these guys, really trying to make it their own. So the approved suppliers list became the buyer's guide, non-conformances became splutterings and glitches, and the non-conformance report became the experience transformer, and audits became self-reflections. These guys were assessed with BSI, got through, no problem whatsoever. A couple of little observations, but and certainly the first assessor that did the stage one absolutely loved the way that this had been really taken to heart. So you absolutely do not need to use the standards language in any shape or form whatsoever. That's probably the most extreme that we've ever done it, but splutterings and glitches, I think that's really cool. Mistake number 3, not using a UCAS approved assessment body. This is a real live mistake. One of the things that we do is we do health and safety and site visits for manufacturing and construction companies. This was for a lift company, and that beam that you see in the picture is a lifting beam. The purple strop is a 1-ton strop, and at the bottom of that purple strop was a 1-ton lift car, or thereabouts. Would have been a bit less than a ton. And holding it all together, you may have noticed, if you look closely, is a 19mm spanner. Well, soon after collecting this particular photograph, the subcontractor that was doing this work collected his P45. 10 out of 10 for ingenuity, kind of minus 10 out of 10 for safety consciousness. That is not the way to sling a lift. But mistake number 3, using a UCAS, non-UCAS assessment body can become one of the most expensive mistakes that people make. Some of these non-UCAS assessment bodies bolt you in for 10 years. The contract is for 10 years. You can extract yourself from it, but it will cost you 50% of the remaining contractual period. We come across this maybe 3 or 4 times a year. So I'd be interested again if this is a mistake that any of you guys have made and you're willing to admit to it. Put that in the chat if you would. So how do you make sure that you don't make that mistake? I've put the link here to the ucas.com website. You need to go to find an organisation. But if you've got a quote from somebody and you haven't yet signed it, ping it to us. It'll take us 10 minutes. We'll be able to tell you whether or not it's a pucker organisation or not. Part of the mistake is you will be deluged if you go down that route with a tornado of templates. One of our clients, £15 million building services contract company, quite a prestigious company in the city. The new MD came in, realised he'd got a non-UCAS system, and actually his words were something along the lines of, this documentation, and I think there was an expletive in there somewhere, but this documentation could have easily been written for a chicken farmer as well as it could have been us, a £15 million building services company. Another one, which is a small insurance company, only 6 or 7 people, that they've signed up to a non-UCAS body, and the comment was they took our money and they left us high and dry. So they've deluged them with kind of paperwork and information, but not actually introduce them to the system, which looks like the standard rather than their business. So we're having to unpick all of that at the moment and make it look like their business and make it useful to them, because they really want to use the damn ideas behind ISO, but have got caught out. Mistake number 4. Creating diluted ISO-specific management system objectives. Mistake number 4 here is our own Jo, who I mentioned earlier. She should be sitting in that canoe, but she is not. She's loitering underneath that canoe because for some peculiar reason she decided to fall out of it. If you ever get to chat to her, I'd ask her why. The solution to mistake number 4 is absolutely business objectives first. I'll give you a little example. We've just started working with a 15 million pound turnover company, 40, 50 people. They've got 2 offices. One's in Ramsgate, the other is in Leamington. And they man and crew boats that run around the UK, and they take 2 types of people out to the sea. One type of people is their own surveyors, and they survey the seabed for wind turbines. Another type of people is the maintenance engineers that they take out to the then built wind farms to maintain the turbines. And they've got, they already had 9, 14 and 45, so quality, environmental, health and safety. They had all of these standards. It's a horrible system that's grown like Topsy. Pretty much, they've made mistake number 1 and mistake number 2 without doubt. It really doesn't reflect the way in which their work works. And we were looking at some of their objectives, and they've got these horrible objectives. So I said to Jack, the main man there, I said, if you could, forget all the ISO stuff, forget everything about ISO. If you could wave a magic wand, what is the one thing that you would do that would significantly move the business forward? He said, oh, it's easy. I said, okay, what is it? He said, we get a bigger boat. He said, we've got 8 boats and they all go out to sea every day and come back every day. If we had 1 boat, and in going out to sea every day, we probably 10, 12 hours, we're processing data, we're maybe processing data for 8, 10 hours best. If we had 1 big boat, we'd be out to sea for a week, come back. Now we probably couldn't process data for 24 hours a day, but we could do 22, and actually if we did 22 hours of data a day, we'd need 30 more people in an office somewhere to process that data. I said, well, if that's your business objective, all of your ISO objectives ought to fit underneath that. So bigger boat, 30 people, you've got a whole load of recruitment activities and objectives under that. bigger boat you've got going out twice, going out and coming back twice a week, your environmental objectives are you're going to be burning a hell of a lot of fuel, a lot less fuel. There will be more fuel that is burnt per journey, but less fuel overall. And there's a whole raft of health and safety objectives that need to be managed as part of having a bigger boat rather than lots of smaller boats. Absolutely business objectives first, management system objectives supporting. Failure to adopt that kind of approach will absolutely mean that your whole system is sub-optimised in all sorts of ways. So, pains again. These are now support pains. And that is Joe's dad's finger, with he rather foolishly introduced a staple to it. So I bet that hurt a lot. So ISO support pain is I'm panicking about a non-conformance. And this has got kind of two parts to it, really. It could be a non-conformance that you may have picked up a year ago and you're just coming up for assessment, and we're going to talk about that type of pain in a moment, and nothing's been done about it. Or it could be, as we experienced with an architect, very, very prestigious London-based architect, well, international-based architect actually, but London head office. They were donated 27 non-conformances for their ISO 14000 assessment visit, and quite rightly in our view, because they really hadn't done a lot. So we got hold of that and we we started to implement the system, because clearly they hadn't done. We started to implement the system, and then we integrated that with their 9000 system, and they got through the assessment with absolutely no problem whatsoever. So panicking about a non-conformance, I'm sure most of you won't have 27 non-conformances, and if we can kind of resolve that, and this again could be, send us the non-conformance, we'll spend 20 minutes, we'll explain it to you in English, and then happily you go on your way. If you want to use us thereafter, so be it. So let us know if you have a non-conformance that needs resolving. The solution to that is kind of keep calm, send us your assessor's report. Sorry, I nearly tripped over into the next pain here, which is pain number 2. I'm panicking about my next assessment. And this is a real life pain as well, because that is Matt, our managing director, and he rather foolishly runs about the planet like a mad thing, which makes his nipples bleed, which I imagine hurts quite a lot. So the result of panicking about your next assessment, I think that usually occurs for a bundle of reasons, one or more of these. You had an assessment a year ago, you kind of scraped through the assessment, and as a result of that thought, I'm not going to do it like that again. And then you promptly did do it like that again, because life gets in the way, doesn't it? So it's probably things like there's been no updating of documentation, you haven't undertaken a management review, you haven't done any audits, you haven't worked with suppliers, or you've got new suppliers but they haven't gone through the supplier approval process, or you haven't done any non-conformances. It's those types of things that are usually not done that makes you think about then panicking to kind of do a load of stuff before the ISO man or the ISO lady cometh. That being the case, then, what is the answer? And there's really two answers to that. If there is enough time, and that depends on kind of when you might talk to people, us or anyone else, certainly when we've been presented with this particular pain before, it's been a case of let's get in there if there's enough time, let's do an audit, let's do a management review, and let's kind of work out a plan of action for taking this forward so this does not occur next year. We would then normally, should you want us to be with you at the assessment visit so we can explain what's gone on and placate the ISO man or ISO lady. Excuse me. The flip side of that, the other solution, is there isn't enough time to do those things before you actually go for assessment. What you then need to do is actually take the hit there will almost certainly be a special visit of one type or another which you'll have to pay for, and then after the assessment and between the special visit we would do what we would ideally do before the original assessment visit. So it would be management meeting, audit, whatever we needed to do to resolve the particular non-conformance that was or the particular issue that was kind of causing you pain around your assessment. So but the other thing that you could do, if there is a particular issue around assessment, you could simply send us your last assessment for free, and we'd spend 20 minutes, half an hour looking at that and having a chat with you. Pain number 3, I'm getting customer pressure to take ISO more seriously. We have a customer currently with one of the smaller certification agencies. They're about 35 people, they're about $1 million and a half turnover, and they make stuff for the MOD. That's all I'm going to say about what they make. There is a rather large, frequently in the financial press company based over in Germany, many billion-pound company that want to give this particular company £10 million worth of work. So they're currently $1.5 million. They want to give them 10 million quid's worth of work a year, not as a one-off, and that would probably only be the start of it. But they are encouraging them to take ISO a bit more seriously. Maybe, instead of having one of the smaller certification bodies, as they've currently got, maybe get BSI or DMV or somebody that's going to be a bit more rigorous. In addition to which, we started with this company some years ago, probably 5 years ago, and at the time their system was horribly complex. So we slimmed the whole thing down. An overcomplicated system is another pain that we often see. We haven't had time to discuss it today, but it is on the website. So as an example, if I remember rightly, their audit schedule was something, it was an Excel spreadsheet, and it was something like 76 columns wide and 54 columns, I think it was, deep. We changed that so it's one sheet of A4, and it's got about 25 different processes on it, and kind of January to December along the top. Slightly more simple. But these guys are getting pressure to take ISO more seriously. That one of the tools, and there are a whole load of tools, so one of the criticisms perhaps levelled against ISO is it's kind of wide but shallow in its interest, and we want to be able to go kind of narrow and deep, which is why we'd say Statius is really about better strategies, business planning, objective setting, that type of thing, better systems, better measurement, and engaged people delivering better results. One of the ways to think about that, and we're using this with a company down, well, two or three companies at the moment, but the one I'm thinking of is down in Hastings. We've given this to 17 of their senior management people, so supervisors, managers and directors, and we're now comparing and contrasting the results from this. It's called the Business Excellence Model. It's a great tool. So this is a quick and dirty assessment of business excellence. It really is 10 minutes, cup of coffee, get a result, and let's compare the results. And in this particular instance, Juan, who's based over in Spain, has given the company 760 odd points, whereas Luke, who's based on he's one of the young supervisors, he's been very harsh and given them 200 odd points. So kind of what's the difference? And there'll be a debate around that, of which I've sent an email literally earlier today to say when we're going to kind of catch up on this, because we were meant to do it before Christmas. But Business Excellence Model, dead good tool for focusing your thoughts and efforts on where money, time and the like is best spent. This is available on the Statius website, I believe. That's also, it ought to be said, that's the old model. The model's been around since would have been early 90s. It was upgraded, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. So the new model looks like this. We've got a similar assessment that we can use for the new model, but most of the people that I speak to, that they prefer the old model approach because it's a bit more granular, I suppose. But yeah, dead cool model if you want to go beyond ISO, and people are forcing you to take these things a bit more seriously. ISO support pain number 3, getting customers pressure to take ISO more seriously. Also, grab a copy of our Management Systems to Unleash Creative Destruction book. That would be a good start. So let's talk about the resources that we have available. If you are the chief exec or top dog in your organisation and you only want to read 5 minutes worth of stuff, I would say the first picture here, working on your business, not in it, is the thing that you want to read. That really encapsulates the way in which we think about ISO. Developing management systems that improve sales and bolster margins. That's more written as a how-to. That's a 36, 40-page document, something like that. That would be for somebody that's implementing the ISO system. And it doesn't matter, 9, 14, 45, or many of the others, 17025 or 13485, whatever ISO system it is, it's been written to kind of, not comply, but take you through the process required for each. Unleash Creative Destruction, that is this little bookie here, and it's really been put together on the basis of we want to give you tools and techniques and tips to make the whole system your own. The second book here is Tools and Techniques to Drive Thinking. There is a model on each page of some different kind of chunk of management. And there are links then to various blogs that we would typically use, for instance, if we're auditing somebody and there were discussions around training and development or whatever part of ISO it was, we'd have something in here that goes narrow and deep into that. And then this, the final kind of book, is Dragon Slaying. And this is really cool, this one, because nothing to do with me, it's even got pictures of dragons drawn by junior school children, which is very cool. Let's find another one. There's another one. Look, very cool pictures of dragons. And all of that is based on not all of that, but our kind of thinking is based on the work of a guy called Deming. He turned around a little company that you might have heard of in the 80s. Companies called Ford. They were losing £3 billion a year. That's when £3 billion was quite a lot of money, and he turned them around in a 3-4 year period to be making £3 billion, along with a guy called Don Peterson. Very cool. So they are our resources. There's many more resources, things like checklists and templates and all sorts of stuff, all free, all available on the links below. And if you can't find what you're looking for, or you need us to invent something else that hasn't been invented yet, we're more than happy to do that. So our objective really here has been to make you think about your own thinking. It's not about a standard. All of this is about making your business better in one way, shape or form or another. The standard is simply a checklist to help you get there. And that doesn't matter what standard it is: quality, environmental, health and safety, lab standards, medical device standards, lift standards, whatever. It really isn't about a standard, it's about making this fit you and your organisation. So now, with a bit of luck, we have time for a little bit of Q&A. You can click on the QR code. We've got that's 2 routes would open to you: those that have already got ISO and those that have not got ISO. It takes you down 2 different paths, and again sends you off to more resources. But I think our queen or presentation princess is now going to reveal herself at this point in time. I very much hope, if the tech doesn't disappoint us again, and talk to us about questions. Are you there, Katie?
Hello.
Have you got any questions that might have been asked throughout?
We don't have any questions currently, but we're on a slight delay with our fancy new tech. But
Okay.
it's nice to know that we've got a couple people in the chat who are fully certified in their journey. So we had a question asked, where are you on your ISO journey? Looks like we've got some fully certified people in the
Okay.
chat.
And I believe we had some questions sent in from people that couldn't make it but wanted the questions answered because we said we'd answer them. Things like how long does it take out to sketch a core activity map and systems diagram, I think was one of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if people do want to sketch out a core activity map and systems diagram, it depends on how many people in your organisation, but I guess we're looking for the top maybe 4, 5, 6 in the organisation. Depending on the size, it might be only 1 or 2. So we'd get all of those people in a room or on a team session, and there's probably it's not that long a time. It may be an afternoon. After an afternoon, we would have a good view of what that is, what your core activity map is. And then we'd tidy that up, and there'd probably be another presentation back in 2 weeks later or a week later. So you're probably talking about a couple of afternoons to do the core activity map and systems diagram. If you wanted to take it further and connect your key performance indicators and measures to that, it might take a bit longer. But the other thing, I guess the other point to note is something along the lines of the most it's ever changed, and we would expect it to change over time, not necessarily if you're starting from scratch before certainly as part of the implementation period, and the most times it's ever changed was 7 with a construction company. So I wouldn't necessarily expect or need it to get it absolutely right first time. It is likely to change 3 or 4 times, but the most we've had is 7. Any other questions coming through, young Katie?
No, I think everyone's got the answers they need, it seems.
Okay. Is that it then? I mean, anything else for us to do this end rather than just say thank you very much, welcome? If you need to give us a call, then please do. My contact details are here. More than happy to help in any way we can.